So every year, Games Workshop hold a Best Miniature of the Year competition where we get to reflect on the year behind us and the miniatures produced by Games Workshop and choose what was ultimately the best Warhammer miniature of the year. And while the ultimate winner of this competition is usually pretty predictable, this year was different because Games Workshop did something this year that they've never done before, and it has revealed a massive problem specifically with Warhammer 40k. And this problem has led me to a dark conclusion about the state of Warhammer 40k. Namely, Warhammer 40k miniatures are getting worse. A lot worse, and it's starting to affect the entire franchise. And if something doesn't change soon, 2025 is going to look pretty bad for Warhammer, and here's how. So generally, it's not new for Games Workshop to hold this Best Mini of the Year competition. They've been doing it for a long time now, and I kind of hate this competition because it basically makes it impossible to Google Best Miniatures of 2024 and not just get countless articles about this event. Someone should really compile all the miniatures that came out in 2024. There was a lot though, admittedly. But regardless, there is a bit of a trend when it comes to the winner of this Warhammer award. Big models. If you've ever been in the YouTube comments section of a Giganta scene compilation for the Justice League animation series, then you'll know that people really like big things. A lot. They're, very, enthused about them. And as a result, typically the big massive monster models that Games Workshop put out every year tend to win this competition, and they even dominate the runner-up lists. And you can see this looking back. In 2021, Bellacore won. In 2022, the Avatar of Cain won. In 2023, there was a minor upset when Angron lost out to Lionel Johnson. But technically, Mr. Johnson is a big model too, and also he's a Space Marine and a Primarch. So going up against him is like going up against a tornado when you're just a toddler. You're just not going to win. And that's because ultimately this Best Miniature Award is decided by total votes from the fans, and whoever gets the most votes wins. So that makes it pretty much a popularity contest, which isn't the worst thing in the world. I'm all for a little bit of populism here and there, but it has also resulted in another trend, and that's that Space Marines tend to do well in this competition because, well, there's more Space Marine players than there are actual Space Marines in the lore of Warhammer. And those players tend to vote for Space Marine models to win. People just fucking love Space Marines, what can I say? And this led to calls, especially from the Age of Sigmar community, for the brackets to be separated out. For the award to not be the best Warhammer miniature of the year, but the best Warhammer 40k miniature of the year. Then a separate award for the best Age of Sigmar miniature of the year, and the best other miniature of the year. And this year, Games Workshop finally did that. They give in to the calls that they've resisted for years, and it might have been a huge mistake because it just revealed something that we can now identify with certainty, and it is a massive problem for Warhammer 40k. Similar to the massive problem that Napoleon had when facing the combined might of Europe. A problem that you may now face if you are prepared to satisfy your appetite for battle. Because this month, Blood and Bayonets from Firelock Games is launching on Kickstarter, and if you dare, you will finally have the opportunity to answer the burning question. Just what the hell was wrong with Napoleon anyway? Like seriously dude, conquering Spain? Not cool. And other perhaps more pressing questions like, can you reach the enemy musket line with bayonet before you are blown to smithereens? Answer, by God, yes. Blood and Bayonets takes the fantastic game Blood and Plunder from Firelock Games and updates it to the Napoleonic era, specifically the Peninsular campaign where Napoleon sought to conquer Portugal and Spain. So you can play as the forces of the French, British, Portuguese, or Spanish. And the thing that makes this game so special is that Firelock Games are bringing back what was so great about Blood and Plunder, and that is naval combat. In Blood and Bayonet, Napoleonic battles can be fought at sea, on land, or even both, combined all on the same table, which is super awesome. I'm a really big fan of amphibious battles. The game consists of between 40 and 60 28mm miniatures, as well as a few ships if you want to add in some naval combat too. So it's not a stressful game to get all your models together to paint for, but instead an excellent, accessible introduction to one of the most exciting conflicts in history with a fantastic wargame rule set. You know you want to, so take command, I charge you, and click my link below to get updates on the upcoming Blood and Bayonets Kickstarter campaign coming at the end of January. And thanks to Firelock Games for sponsoring today's video. So what is this massive problem? Well, it's obvious when you look at the winners of the Age of Sigmar bracket for Best Miniature, the winner of which was Usheran a big, strong, scary ghoul for the ghoul faction. And I have to admit, even as someone that is not a fan of giant centerpiece models, even I have to fall in supplication before usher on more Tarkov delusion. Sure, he looks like a giant meatball when viewed from above, but looking face on, this shit is amazing, especially for a faction that is made up of the most boring parts of the old Warhammer Fantasy Vampire Count faction. Like seriously, a faction of ghouls? Who cares about ghouls?
Funny little green ghouls got...
You don't see much ghoul heads climbing around out there for more ghouls. But damn, GW actually made ghouls cool with ushering, and it's not like anything I've seen in miniatures before. This has a vision and a vibe to it that is just excellent. Then in second place is Vizek, which is another great model, far better than the old Vermin Lord models, though there's some fundamental flaws to the sculpting on this one. Some of the bits just don't look good, like the stitching parts look weird, but overall the model is very evocative. Same with Abraxia, who has really taken the Chaos Warrior aesthetic to peak level. She's basically a far better version of Age of Sigmar Archaon, who was way too busy and overly complicated, and just a total downgrade from the old Warhammer Fantasy version of Archaon. In comparison to this, Abraxa is actually restrained, which is a weird thing to say about a giant horned woman on a monster fucking lizard, but this is Age of Sigmar. There we are. Though I still think she would have looked cool with a helmet, but that's just me. And still, even the classics look great here. Grombrindle, for example, has never looked more iconic, and he actually has emotion on his face. This might be one of the best sculpted faces out of Games Workshop, and even the 5th place model, the Chaos Sorcerer Lord, is really good. Sure, he looks pretty basic, but he has a timeless look to him. It's a really clean sculpt with great options, perfect for a generic character, though personally I think that the new Skaven Claw Lord on Gnaw Beast should have had 5th place. But that's just one sauce. The other section of the award show is cooking even better. There's the Lich Priest riding a bone dinosaur, which personally isn't my tastes. I was never really a dinosaur kid, but the Lich Priest himself on the Howdah looks really great, and the way he's casting his spell by spilling sand out of his hand is just such an imaginative way to portray magic. I don't think I've ever seen another model do something like that, not amongst the Tomb King line, not amongst anything. It's very cool. So if you like Tomb Kings, I think this is a great model. But then in my opinion, number 2 is even better. Lady Elise Ducard, which is just a fantastic traditional fantasy miniature. Sure, the goblet is a bit too big, but this is a really nice unicorn, and the posing overall in this model is excellent. She is one of the most evocative sculpts I've ever seen come out of Games Workshop, and I'm not just talking about the feet. Then we have number 3 from Horus Heresy, the Thousand Sun Librarian Council, who, you know, is okay. I guess sort of a space marine. I like the scarab on his chest. That's nice. His cloak is attached to his arms. Pretty cool. 4th picks up again with the Maelstrom Genestealer Alpha, which is awesome because overall those Maelstrom abominations are genuinely the first time I've ever looked at Genestealer miniatures and thought that they looked like anything other than boring dog. Sorry, not sorry. I mean, I just don't think Genestealers look good. And I have a full Genestealer cult army, but for me, the Genestealer parts of that army look kinda trash. Not these though. These actually look like alien nightmares, finally posed in a truly inhuman way, rather than the purse snatcher pose of the 40k Genestealers. Plus, the full gang even comes with the bulbous brains floating around like something out of a techno-futurist horror movie. Truly excellent. Then we get the last one, the Alpha Legion Saboteur Council, and yeah, he looks, you know, yeah. So did you notice the problem in that category? Because it's the exact problem that has permeated the Warhammer 40k section, and it has done so for the entire year of 2024, but it goes back way further, and now we can clearly see it because the 40k models are all in their own category, and it's one word: boring. Because it's now evident that for the last few years, Warhammer 40k has increasingly lost its identity, and the miniatures produced for it are beginning to feel very bland. Seriously, look at the winners of the 2024 awards. We had Asmodee, who is genuinely one of the most nothing models I've ever seen. He looks fine, I guess. His helmet option looks a bit cooler than the hood, but the pose overall is unnatural and stiff. There's nothing evocative to the model. I think the manacles hiding his cock and balls are probably the most interesting part of him. And do Space Marines even have balls? I don't think so, right? Like, they get castrated with acid, don't they? Then we have Aveline, which looks okay, they tried something different with her. I'm gonna give them that. But seriously, this is not the direction to go. This is not a great model. I know a lot of people like this model, but come on, the fire looks weird. I know they're trying to do a fleur-de-lis with it, and it's from her tie-in book, but it just does not work for me. I love sisters. They're my favorite faction, but this ain't it. Then there's the Inner Circle companions who look okay, I guess. But third best miniature of the entire year? Really? These guys? And aren't these just Asmodee because the hoods and cloaks are identical? Then there's the novelty miniature released for the Ratlings, which looks fine, and so far it's the only miniature on this list that is displaying any sort of interesting story or dynamic, but it's a novelty miniature. How is this even on the list? And still, the worst one is number 1, because this is the thing that blew it all away, the thing that prompted me to finally make a video on this topic. The number 1 top best miniature made for all of Warhammer 40k in the entire year of 2024 was a Space Marine upgrade sprue. That's right, the Night Lord's upgrade sprue has won number 1 out of all the miniatures for Warhammer 40k. When I first read this, I genuinely thought the Games Workshop were joking, but no, they're serious. And wow, we really have to talk about this, because what the fuck is going on in Warhammer 40k? Is it alright? Is it okay? It's a good thing the Games Workshop did create different brackets this year, because this would have beaten Oshiran. And is this truly better? Really? And I get it, people vote for Space Marines a lot, but this is not just a voting problem. It's the actual options that people had to vote for this year. They were poor overall. I mean, look at all the releases from throughout the year, and it's clear to me that the problem with 40k sculpts right now isn't just power armor bad, Space Marines suck, which is often the diagnosis online for 40k when people talk about the problems that the current 40k line has, but it's not that. There's power armor Space Marines that were released in 2024 and still look good, but they happen to be models for other games, like Endred Har, who was released for Horus Heresy, and he genuinely has a more interesting pose and aesthetic than any new 40k Space Marine model in the last few years. This is a Warhammer 40k problem overall. There's a severe lack of creativity in the 40k model range right now, and new releases are starting to feel very pedestrian. And it's not like 40k doesn't have space for creative, exciting, weird, and interesting miniatures. I mean, 40k is a super rich setting. It has a ton of scope for variety, and as proof, look at the Necromunda line. The models for that game are consistently incredible, and some of the best work coming out of Games Workshop, not only now, but in the entire history of the company. There are some amazing miniatures here, but 40k increasingly feels like the designers and sculptors just aren't allowed to take risks in how they sculpt miniatures, and as a result, most of the new 40k miniatures have just lacked a real wow factor. It's rare that I ever see a 40k model anymore and feel much of really anything. Certainly not the same way I felt when I looked at genuine pieces of art like Oshiran or Elise. And don't get me wrong, not every model can or should be an absolute banger, but 40k models are starting to feel phoned in, and I'm worried that the digital sculpting tools that allow the artists to place countless gribbles and ammo pouches and copy-paste previous model skeletons that is getting really obvious in 40k is hurting the identity and aesthetic of the franchise and becoming a total liability. And while I hope that this is just a case of 2024 being particularly bad and that 2025 will be better, I'm kinda concerned that it won't be, especially now that we've got the Slaaneshi Emperor's Children coming out, who I'm really looking forward to, because I've always been a fan of Slaanesh, but I'm gonna be honest, they are a faction that could really benefit from some very weird, very Necromunda-infused stylings, but I'm concerned that things are going to get a whole lot worse this year. I mean, are we really gonna get anything that goes as hard as the Hedonites of Slaanesh faction for 40k? I mean, probably not, right? Like, the Emperor's Children are just going to be Space Marines with a weird mouth, and I hope it doesn't look like that, but then I look at the 2024 Blood Angels refresh, and then I compare it to the 2024 Skaven refresh, and it's really hard not to just look for the nearest bridge. And this is really dangerous, because Games Workshop are actually starting to face a bit of competition, vibes-wise, for their miniatures. Compare the 40k releases this year to some of the Trench Crusade stuff that's just come out, and it's evident that there's something really lacking in the vision that Games Workshop have for 40k right now. And I hope this isn't just the designers and sculptors being bored with 40k, because that is something that designers historically have talked about in the past. But if it is, then then Games Workshop just need to let them open the pans, let the creatives there go crazy, go nuts, create whatever they want, because letting sculptors follow their own twisted nightmares is the only way we'll get the best looking models. And I think the Trans Crusade kind of proves that. You can't mandate a wow factor, it has to be organic. So let them loose, Games Workshop, feed them whatever the hell you're feeding the Necromunda team. So is this something that you've noticed as well? Let me know in the comments below. And subscribe if you want to see more content like this. This year ad revenue was down almost about half of last year, so it was only the support of patrons that allowed me to keep going. So if you want to support an independent voice in the wargame hobby, then please check out my Patreon for bonus videos, live streams, and access to an awesome hobby community. And thanks to my patrons, especially CryptoKev, and I'll catch y'all next time. Bye bye.